Do it for the vine.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Agony, Leena. This is a series on my channel where I give you advice on your existential questions while taking you to new and lovely places. Today we are in Cheltenham, or Cheltenham Spa if you're feeling fancy, and we're just going to have a little walk around. You've sent me some questions on Instagram, which I appreciate, and I'm going to try my best. I'm going to try my best to answer them, and that's all we can all do in this world, is try our best. Let's go. Thoughts on dumbing down for dating from Lady with a PhD. Well, lady with a PhD, I get you in some respects. I understand the conundrum. I think sometimes it is important to feel like you're on the same level as your partner and feel like you can tell them about your, not just like what's been happening in your day or what happened to you yesterday, but your existential angst, like what you're really confused about. And especially when you're trying to resolve an argument, I think it's good that people have a basic understanding. But also, in people's defense, I think there's loads of different areas of your life that can be fulfilled in different ways, and nobody is their intelligence. I think a lot of people connect with partners because of a sense of humour, which does have a relative link to intelligence, I guess, but there's different kinds of intelligence. And I think that there's a difference between, like, in inverted commas, dumbing down while dating and just dating somebody with a different personality type and a different skill set to you, which ultimately I think makes you stronger. And I think also, like, because you're not your intelligence, I think sometimes when you're in a scrape or if you're in a really hard part of a relationship, it's better to have a similar belief system or a similar goal or a similar sense of humour to resolve those kind of things, rather than just both being really clever together but also hating each other. Do you know what I mean? Any advice for having two jobs at once? Yes. So what I would say is that it is impossible to have two mistresses. You can't do it when it comes to work, but it is often necessary to have two employers, which is totally fine. I've done it a shit ton in my life. To be honest, I've done that more than have one job. But I think the secret is that you yourself, nobody else needs to know it, and definitely your employers don't need to know it, but you yourself need to know who is the priority. An example is that I used to be a receptionist, and I also used to work at a cafe bar in a theatre. Now these jobs are both similar, they paid me about the same. I think it was like £3.83 an hour. Joy to the world. But the theatre job was my priority because I wanted to get out of Coventry and I wanted to do something in the arty sector. I knew that even though I was just kind of like washing pans and cleaning stuff, that was the place where I was more likely to meet people who'd help me get out of that. Whereas at the cathedral, where I worked as a receptionist, there just weren't the people that I thought were going to, help me move on to the next thing. And the people who were my bosses weren't people that I would like the jobs of. So that was my secret priority. So I think I kind of probably gave about 70% to one job and 110% to the other. And the same came like later in my 20s when I was working in a publishing house. Sorry, I almost swallowed a fly, but I didn't. He lives to see another day. When I was working in a publishing house, but then I was obviously also doing loads of YouTube on the side. That was the case for about 7 or 8 years. And I think the important thing there was that obviously secretly YouTube was my priority, but not too secretly. But I was able for both to see the value and be able to show value to the other one. So for my YouTube channel, I'd use the stuff that I learned about in my daily life and as like working in an office to inform my videos and to bring a bit of expertise into what I was doing. And when I went into the office, I'd learnt loads about metadata and tagging, and I'd gone to like networking events about YouTube and social media, and I was able to bring that to meetings and show the value of me having a side project and having a side hustle, I guess, if you want to call it that, and showing that actually it was really good and I was bringing something extra to the workplace that other people weren't bringing. So you kind of have to like please two mistresses at once and show the crossover value, whilst also secretly in your head knowing who you want to end up with when the lights go out at the end of the day. How do you live in a world with so much apathy without becoming a cynic? The greatest question of all time. Who can really say? I think that it's interesting that you said the word apathy and you didn't say the word cruelty, which says to me that you don't find... Why can't I put my phone away? which says to me that you don't find like most of humanity actively cruel, but just numbed, zoned out, etc., which I've talked about in other videos, but I feel like there's lots of reasons that people are numbed out, zoned out, aren't engaged, and they're not all reasons that point to me being cynical. Maybe sad, but the idea of being cynical and most of the world is like actively evil just isn't data based, as I've talked about in this video. But the apathy thing is annoying unless, again, you dig into some data and you realise that you actually only need 3.5% of the population doing non-violent rebellion to change things. There's been loads of research into this, like all over the globe, different kind of moments in history when things have changed, and they found the general percentage is only 3.5% of people actively, non-violently protesting to change huge things in the world. Key emphasis on non-violent, but it's really interesting. I'll leave some links below, but if you think about that in terms of your own life, if say that, like, think of 100 people that you know, are at least 3.5% of those not apathetic to other people's problems, would put themselves in active inconvenience to change things a little bit? If only 3.5 of those people, maybe 3 adults and a child, would be willing to do that, then I don't think there's any basis for your cynicism, even if you feel it. Knowing that it doesn't have any like data basis is quite helpful. If you know someone who is cheating on someone else, do you just mind your own business, or do you tell them? I had so many notes on this, so I'm going to try and cover as much of my thoughts on it as possible. But I think ultimately how I see cheating is it isn't just somebody did a bad thing and it's either a secret or it's out in the open. It's also kind of like somebody's life is built on a lie, you know? And I think if we applied that to anything else, where you knew someone where there's this huge invisible building block in your life, you would tell them if they were about to trip up. So say if you found out the foundations of the house they were renting were rotting, you'd probably tell them. Or if you found out that their employer was a scammer and actually wasn't going to pay them that month, you'd probably tell them. It's quite a vital part of the building blocks of somebody's life. And I feel like with the whole cheating thing, it's not I know that couples that have got over cheating, but it's actually the lying about the cheating that completely ruins them. So in that sense, I think that it's really important, as somebody who knows them, you sound like you might be a friend, to tell them to kind of prevent the excess casualties from one bad thing happening. And I just feel like the worst thing about like not being told about cheating is that the humiliation of everybody else knowing that your life was a fiction, you know? Like for me, if that was happened to me, that would be the worst part. Not what was actually happening, the fact that other people knew and didn't tell me before I completely tripped up. This sounds like it's happened to me, but it hasn't. But I have a lot of weird, I don't know, I can imagine that happening, and I know exactly how I'd feel, and I know that I'd want you to tell me, so tell them, okay? So as it was evident from the footage yesterday, I definitely needed some food in me. My body was revolting. In the words of Sophie from Music and Lyrics, there will be no more words until I'm fed. I could be inspired by just a piece of bread. And I got some bread, and now I'm actually ready to answer the last question. So the last question was, can you enjoy luxury events like the Met Gala and the Olympics and still support ending systemic oppression? Now, I get how you kind of feel conflicted, but I think those two examples are quite interesting. One, because I think in, personally, my perfect socialist world, the Olympics would still exist. It's still fundamentally quite fun. And also the Met Gala, because that's obviously all about fashion and expression and art, even though it's been corrupted by gross capitalist luxury sentiments. The idea of the Met Gala is still quite cool, and I think it would still be there in a cool, friendly, kind future. Obviously the way it's run isn't perfect, but I think that the kind of attention economy it runs on isn't just like it doesn't make all of its funding, all its profits from like the masses like us, the lowly people who have under £1 million. Like, it doesn't make all of its money from our attention. So I think that kind of critical attention economy maybe even adds to it, or at least creates some interesting discussions. Personally, I also think it's interesting to see every year not who is the most important people in the world, but who Anna Wintour thinks are the most important people in the world, and to like be a bit analytical of that. Like obviously this year there was only one Indigenous person on the carpet. There was loads of like other really random stuff that was going on, and it created a lot of really interesting discussion. Again, with AOC wearing her tax the rich dress, that's like an interesting springboard for everybody to discuss what performative activism is. Personally, I don't think AOC is a performative activist. If you watch from like the videos of her getting ready for the gala, she's actually at work that day, actually changing policies and doing stuff, and then only going to the gala in the evening, whereas everybody else like spent the whole day, I don't know, scrubbing their toenails. So I wouldn't say that's performative, but again, it was an interesting discussion to have. And she had this thing where she said, like, the medium is the message. And I think that's also really important. The idea of getting really good at something, like the Olympics, like the idea of human excellence and pushing yourself and breaking a record, doing something impossible, can be really powerful. And I don't think that it's bad to like be interested in them, as long as you're also critical of them. I think that's the last question for today, because who knows when I'll need to eat again. This is maybe as competent as I'll ever be. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want to watch more Agony Ant videos, there's a playlist of them here. This video was made possible by the Gumption Club, who are the lovely people who tip me per video to make sure these videos keep happening and are free for you. Have a really nice day, and take everything I say with a tiny little pinch of salt. Frog Snog out.